Good afternoon and welcome to the Ocean City Library's Lunch and Learn Meatless Meals. I'm Chris Zellers from Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and I would like to thank Julie Howard and the Ocean City Free Library for hosting this event today. Just to give you a little bit of overview on Rutgers Cooperative Extension, if you're not familiar with us, we're part of the Rutgers, New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station. Rutgers is a land-grant university, and that means we have cooperative extension services in New Jersey to support the community with educational information that is evidence-based, scientifically research-based. Rutgers Cooperative Extension is a partnership between the Board of County Commissioners, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And we have faculty and/or staff in 21 of the 21 New Jersey counties. We're composed of 3 departments, including Agriculture and Natural Resources, 4-H and Youth Development, and Family and Community Health Sciences, or FCHS, which is my department. FCHS provides outreach in New Jersey and beyond on topics related to nutrition, chronic disease prevention, food safety, and overall wellness. We hope that you'll visit our website and well, there we have nutrition and wellness related resources. And we also put stuff out on social media on a regular basis that's educational. So we hope that you'll follow us, and I will give you the slides for that at the end of the presentation. Rutgers Cooperative Extension programs and materials are open to all without regard of race, color, national origin, gender identity, religion, age, height, weight, disability, political beliefs, sexual orientation, marital status, family status, or veteran status. So let's talk about meatless meals today. There's 3 objectives to this presentation. The benefits of meatless meals is the first objective. And then we're going to discuss how to incorporate meatless meals into daily eating habits. And we're going to talk about ways to easily create meatless meals so that you can give it a try at home if you're not already doing that. And after the presentation, I will provide some recipes so that you can try plant-based meals at home. And maybe it's a new idea for you, or maybe it's something that's a little different that'll give you some ideas for eating plant-based at home. This QR code that's found here, if you take out your smartphone and open it to the camera, it will give you a copy of the link, and you can just click on that link and it'll take you to the evaluation for this program. And if you do the evaluation and you leave your email, it will not associate you in any way with your answers. But if you leave your email, it'll give me the ability to send you and pick you to see if you're one of the people that won a prize. So about 3 or 4 times a year, we pick prizes, and we've had some good ones. So I encourage you to take this evaluation. It's only about 2 or 3 minutes at most. So if you could do that, it's very helpful for me to get the feedback to help me make programming and continue to teach to the community. Before we get started with today's conversation, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information as a point of context with starting. There's several different ways to eat meatless. Some people are vegetarian. Of course, a lot of people know about vegetarians. They engage in predominantly plant-based eating all the time. But this presentation is specifically to discuss meatless meals. And I just want to give you a little bit of background information on the different ways that people might eat plant-based meals all the time. And I just wanted to differentiate them from meatless meals. So the difference between a plant-based living pattern or diet pattern and meatless meals. This presentation isn't trying to talk you into becoming a plant-based only eater. It's still going to be for people that already are plant-based eaters to maybe add some extra things into their life. But it's also an opportunity for people that, maybe just want to add it in here or there and still enjoy some animal protein from time to time if they so desire. So just to give you some ideas on how to be meatless. That's not to say that plant-based eaters are still going to get something from this, but it's kind of an idea for everybody to be included in this, not just to try to have people change the way they eat. So let's talk about things that, folks that are meatless eaters, but they do this on a regular pattern versus being meatless meal eaters, where they're occasionally eating meatless meals. A vegan that you can see is the top one there. They don't consume any products made from animals or any of the byproducts of animals. They don't eat fish, red meat, pork, or poultry. And they also don't consume eggs or dairy. Further, they do not consume products made from animals. So for instance, they don't eat honey because that comes from bees. They also don't wear leather, silk, or wool because they're animal products, animal byproducts. And they don't use any body care products which have animal byproducts in them, like shampoo or lipstick. There's also a few different types of vegetarian, according to the American Dietetics Association. They defined a vegetarian diet as one that does not include meat, including fowl, so chicken, or seafood or products containing those foods. So that's strict vegetarian. However, there's other types of vegetarians. For instance, there's a lacto-vegetarian, which is a person who doesn't consume meats, but does consume dairy products from animals. And those dairy products would include cheeses, yogurts, and milk that they do consume those. Also, an ovo-vegetarian eats eggs in their plant-based lifestyle, but they don't eat meat, seafood, poultry, or dairy, so just the eggs. And as you might conclude from the other definitions, a lacto-ovo-vegetarian eats eggs and dairy with a plant-based diet. However, excuse me. However, they leave out the meats when they're from those meals that they eat from their dietary pattern or the animal-based proteins. A pescatarian is a person who consumes seafood as part of a plant-based diet, but not chicken, pork, or beef. And a pollitarian is a person whose dietary pattern is focused on plant-based food and chicken only. Some do consume dairy and eggs, those that are pollitarians. Those who eat a plant-based diet with chicken and seafood are considered to be pesca-pollitarians. And then finally, there are the flexitarians, which are people who eat mostly vegetarian diet, but they also allow meat and seafood in their diet occasionally. And that allows for more flexibility than a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle. Now, while all these options have various levels of inclusion or exclusion of animal products, the important thing to consider is that when you're eating any dietary pattern, you should eat whole foods that are high in vitamins and minerals so that you're eating a nutrient-dense diet that's best for your body. For example, my department chair, Sarah Elkanib, always says soda and ketchup are meatless options, but that doesn't really make them a healthy option, right? Because ketchup is loaded with sugar, as are sugary drinks like soda. I'd also want to caution you that when undertaking any dietary changes, you should really consult a physician and make sure when you make those changes that you're including all 5 of the food groups as part of your diet plan. If you remove animal proteins, make sure you're eating a plant-based protein like beans or legumes. Also, make sure not to overload on one food group. I've talked to people who say they are vegetarians or vegans and don't eat plant-based protein. And in turn, they eat a lot of carbohydrates to fill themselves up and make them feel, make them kind of satisfied. So that, some of them don't even eat vegetables and they're trying to be vegan or vegetarian. So that leaves a very limited amount of food that you're going to eat. And they might be loading up on those carbohydrates to feel full and to give their bodies energy, which isn't really a well-balanced diet for sure. While Americans usually do get enough protein, mainly from animal protein, it is important to make sure that if you are going to have like a plant-based lifestyle or you're just incorporating meatless meals, make sure when you're doing that you get some beans and legumes in there for that protein. That's important. According to the dietary guidelines for Americans, a healthy vegetarian dietary pattern can be achieved by incorporating proteins from plants. And again, those are those legumes, almonds, nuts, and whole grains that are high in protein. The vegetarian diet pattern is higher in soy and whole grains. And if you're thinking about making those dietary changes to plant-based, before you do so, try doing these meatless meals that I'm suggesting and maybe integrate it slowly. See how you do. Play around with it before you drastically change things and take all the animal protein out. That'll give you the ability to change things up a little bit and recognize where you need to add things in and how you're feeling. So why are meatless meal? What are meatless meals, and why would we consider doing them? We've talked about the plant-based diet patterns already and what they mean. So let's look at these meatless meals. Choosing meatless meals really means that you don't have to commit to being a totally changing your diet to all plant-based, like maybe a vegetarian or a vegan would. But it gives you the option that you can still have a little bit of animal protein in there if you like, but occasionally eat meatless and still enjoy your meals as you would normally. And this also means moving the main protein when you're enjoying a meatless meal from animal protein to plant protein in that meal, which we'll discuss in a few minutes about how to do that a little bit easier. Eating plant-based meals can be really cost effective too. We're going to look at that in a second because usually on average, plant-based proteins are less than animal proteins. We'll look at a comparison of the meat and plant-based proteins in a second. Like I said, meatless meals are healthy and they really decrease your intake of saturated fats, which are the fats we don't want to eat. We want to have less of saturated fats in our diets, and we want to have more unsaturated fats for optimal health. And so we get that from a meatless meal, having unsaturated fats in our diets. And then finally, plant-based foods also allow us to get protein in our body through plant-based protein, as long as we're remembering to add that in and not eat all carbohydrates and no fruits and vegetables or our plant-based protein. So keep that in mind as you move through and try to add this in. So let's talk about here is an example from a local supermarket. And I have up on this screen the white cannelli beans that are up there, and they're $1.89 or 12 cents an ounce. And then we have the eggplant. And the eggplant in the center is $1.69, and that costs $1.69 per pound. And that averages out to about 11 cents per ounce in comparison to the 12 cents in the beans. And then the ground beef on the right is on sale for $12.22 or $3.49 per pound or 22 cents per ounce. And that's almost double the beans and the eggplant. So you can try adding some of these meatless meals in. You can make a meal out of the eggplant with some other veggies and maybe some quinoa for some protein or some beans. And you can do that a few times a week, and that's going to save you some money on average. The other thing about buying a meatless meal or making a meatless meal using this comparison is, when you buy that ground beef, it's going to cost you $12.22. So if you're really looking at saving at the grocery store, you might want to think about the fact that instead of investing in $12.22 for the meat, you could do it for $1.69 with the eggplant. So just some things to think about there. So let's talk about the components of a healthy meal. A healthy meatless meal is the same as an animal protein healthy meal. You want to think about my plate and the 5 food groups. Even when you're eating these meatless meals, that's very important. Remember the 5 food groups, and of course, fruit still remains fruit in the 5 food groups if you're eating meatless, and same with vegetables. And beans and nuts and seeds are part of the protein group. So if you're eating a meatless meal, you can put beans, nuts, legumes, and seeds in as part of that protein group. Also, you want whole grains would remain the same, but you can add some whole grains like quinoa, for instance, is very high in protein for a grain. It's a whole grain, and that you can mix in with different things, and that's going to give you, add it into your salad, for instance, and serve it cold. That's going to give you a little bit more protein in your diet. The only group that's really missing from the 5 food groups in sometimes in a vegetarian meal or a meatless meal is that dairy group. You can still add, if you make, all the time I make a meatless meal with eggplant and some tomato. I put like a can of chunk tomatoes in there, and I'll put maybe even some beans or some quinoa in there. But then you can top it off with a little bit of low-fat mozzarella cheese, and then you'll have your dairy in there. But if you want to substitute it out and you're looking for other ways to add to meatless meals besides maybe cheese or something like that, or milk, you could, the important component of the dairy group is really the calcium that we get from that, which we all know, is good for our bones and our teeth. So if you want to try to substitute something for those calcium, or like maybe you're making something, it doesn't really make sense to have cheese in it or milk in it, then try thinking about adding green leafy vegetables, because green leafy vegetables do have calcium in them. So that's a good way to still get your calcium and eat a meatless meal. Also, other things are fortified with calcium, like orange juice. So that's a good way to get some extra calcium in there if you're looking to replace that way. Also, sorry. All right, so let's talk a little bit about trying the saturated fats, because I mentioned them in a slide in one of the earlier slides, and how they can be an important component of a meatless meal, and how they can be part of a good meatless meal. Or even, you know, if you're already eating vegetarian or vegan, you're not eating animal proteins, then you probably already know this, but we'll look it over and see how that can help you out. So saturated fats come from animals. So for instance, things like butters and meats are going to have those saturated fats in them. Lower saturated fats are chicken and pork. And that's why when you hear somebody, if you've ever been to one of my other lectures, I'll say when you're eating protein, try to eat lean protein like seafood, chicken, and pork. So lower saturated fats are things like chicken, pork, and seafood. It's recommended that we do eat less saturated fat to reduce the risk of heart disease and improve good cholesterol. So that's why that's important. And so the benefit, one of the benefits of eating meatless meals occasionally during the week is that you can, you know, eat a less saturated fat diet, and that's going to help you with better outcomes of your cholesterol and heart disease and whatnot. Unsaturated fats come from non-animal products like vegetables, beans, and legumes. And things like olives, nuts, and seeds, and fish contain unsaturated fats like monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. They're the good fats, and they're the ones we want to eat because they support good cell health, they store nutrients, and they produce important hormones for our body to function properly. So think more unsaturated fats, less saturated fats. The dietary guidelines recommends keeping saturated fat consumption to less than 10% of calories per day. And this recommendation is based on scientific evidence that replacing saturated fat with unsaturated fat is associated with reduced risk of cardiovascular disease. You should also note that no specific amount is given as a recommendation. You know, like we will give recommendations for how much fruit and vegetables you should eat a day, but we don't do that for fat. And that it's because there is a specific determination for healthy outcomes, and that's not been determined by fats yet. So that's still being discovered in the research. Therefore, dietary guidelines recommend limiting saturated fats and using unsaturated fats instead. So that's why they do that. It's important to note that all fats have 9 calories in each gram of fat in comparison with carbohydrates and proteins. They only have 4 calories per gram. So this is a good reason to make sure to limit saturated fats and try focusing on unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats are going to help us to maintain a healthy weight too. And this, of course, is another good reason that we could eat plant-based meals or meatless meals here and there, because you're eating healthy fats in things like avocados. So good reason to go ahead and eat those plant-based meals or meatless meals. So I mentioned in the last slide, maintaining a healthy weight through less saturated fats. But there's other things that plant-based foods do. They're going to have positive effects on the body overall. We know, for instance, that vegetables and fruits are lower in calories, and that's why they help us maintain a healthy weight. They naturally have less saturated fat, making them better for our health. They have phytochemicals, which are shown to reduce free radicals and reduce inflammation. And they're high in fiber, which keeps the body functioning properly. And that's important. And we don't get enough fiber as Americans. So it's another good reason, you know, to add that fiber in there by having a plant-based meal. Since plant-based meals have all these wonderful features, studies are targeting the positive effects of plant-based diets or plant-based meals and how they contribute to reducing obesity, heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, inflammation, and even some cancers. Much like other dietary factors, like sugar, salt, and fat, it's not easy to prove that one thing over the other is the reason, these diseases are being prevented. And so it's hard to pinpoint and say, yes, it's directly meatless meals, but we can't say that they're single-handedly doing it and protecting us from chronic disease. But they are part of a well-balanced diet. And we know that a well-balanced diet with a variety of healthy foods and all 5 food groups is a good part of a lifestyle that's healthy for us and can help to prevent chronic disease. So consider adding them in. So there's several reasons why people opt for meatless meals or not eating animal protein for various reasons. So for instance, some people eat plant-based because of the impact on the environment raising animals might have as food. So they opt to do that meatless option. Also, some people eat plant-based for health reasons, like avoiding the saturated fats we talked about, or for some people for religious reasons. And just some people don't like the way the animals are treated when they're raised for food production, so they opt to not eat meat. Cost is another reason why some people don't eat animal protein. And recently there's been fluctuating availability. I know for a while chicken was hard to get for different reasons. And also there was during the pandemic, there was just a lot of supply chain issues, as we all know. So there's lack of availability. So, some people started eating a little bit more meatless meals because of that. I know we did in our house. And the cost, it's just saves some money to eat meatless. But no matter why you might want to do it or why other people do it, there's really some health benefits to doing it, as I mentioned in the last slide. So it's worth considering. When you think about creating meatless meals, I promised in the beginning we talk about this creating meatless meals. When you think about creating these recipes, think about things that you've used in the past and try to discover ways to remove the animal protein you would usually add to that favorite recipe. So for instance, it's fall, it's getting a little chilly out there. Think about maybe making chili that can be meatless instead of using either, sometimes I use ground beef, sometimes I use ground turkey, sometimes I use ground chicken, but think about taking those products out and just having the veggies and beans. You can also think about adding tofu to the chili. So tofu is a soy product, which is a good source of protein. And it's really been given a bad name of late in the media for having a link to breast cancer. But there has been recent studies showing that there is no evidence that soy eaten by young girls is associated with breast cancer. That being said, if your doctor has recommended for any reason that you should avoid soy, then listen to your doctor, because the study is a general recommendation. It's not for your individual needs, and you should always follow your doctor's recommendations for your individual needs. Back to tofu, it comes in different forms. So sometimes it comes in a firm form and sometimes soft, and you can choose which one you would like to add to your meal. Firm might be a good addition to a stir fry. So for instance, you might want to take out chicken or shrimp or steak and then put that tofu in as the stir fry content, like as the bulk of the stir fry. It also tofu takes on whatever the flavor is that you're adding it to. So if you're adding it to that stir fry, it's not going to change the taste of the dish. It's just going to take on that flavor that already exists and maybe even enhance it a little bit. The other thing you can do to kind of change up and make a meatless meal is think about, for instance, I love stuffed peppers. It's one of my favorite, especially this time of year, dishes. So when I decide to make them plant-based and substitute it out, instead of using maybe ground beef, I use rice or quinoa in there. And then I mix in some black beans and some diced onions instead of that ground beef, and stuff them in the pepper, and then put the sauce over top of them. So that's a good idea. And it's easy to do if you stock your pantry with things that you can sub out meatless meals for. So for instance, think about putting whole grains like brown rice and quinoa in your pantry so that you have them. They're going to keep they're good staples to have so that you could make something into a meatless meal. Or you could having a variety of beans and lentils in there, whether they're dried or canned, is easier to make substitutions. And I will say, that, you know, if you're going to go with the canned beans, try to buy the low sodium version. If you can't buy the low sodium version, then try to get, open the can, put them in maybe a colander and rinse them off to rinse off that sodium that they use to pack the beans in if they're not low sodium. So think about trying to do that. Or of course you could soak the beans in water to get them soft so that you can use them if they're dry beans. Try to choose one day a week and make it maybe Meatless Monday. That was popular for a while. Or try to find something that, you know, you can do one day a week, just to add it in that fits into your schedule. It doesn't have to be an entire day of eating plant-based, like maybe just try one meal a day to start and move in and gradually add from there if you want to continue to add meatless meals. The one thing that's really important that I always mention, whole foods. And it's just like any other thing. Whole foods are going to be really important as you're doing a plant-based diet. Don't decide that you're going to do a plant-based diet and run out and buy a lot of processed plant-based food. Just like any other processed food that comes in a package, it's going to have things added to it, chemicals and things in the processing that are going to make it less healthy than a whole food. Like that whole, remember the whole eggplant I showed you. That's going to be healthier than something that you buy that's pre-processed. So take a look at the ingredients label and the nutrition facts label and try to figure out, you know, what it is that you're looking for in your meal. Look at the sodium. Does it, you know, did they take the meat out and they chocked it full of salt? Look at the sodium contents. And remember, you know, we're only supposed to have 2,500 milligrams of sodium a day. And sometimes, you know, you'll get one of those products and they might have 600 to 800 in that one little product. So remember that when you're looking at the salt content on the ingredients label of a processed plant-based meal. The other thing to look for is the sugar. Did they take out the meat and add a lot of sugar, or did they add a lot of fat? And remember, we're looking for unsaturated fats. We're looking, you know, eating plant-based, one of the healthy parts about it is that it has the unsaturated fats. So try to make sure they're not adding a lot of saturated fats or trans fats or anything like that in there. For meatless meals to be healthy, they should be whole foods and not processed. So try to check them out. Try to use some of the recipes I send you maybe to start, or think about those substitutions to create a way to make a healthy meal. Another thing I'd like to do is to create like a pasta dish. I might grab whatever vegetables we have, throw some garlic. Everything's good with garlic, right? Garlic and olive oil, and then put the veggies in there, maybe a little low sodium chicken stock or chicken broth or vegetable broth, and add that in there, and then put a little lemon in with it or something like that. Thicken it with a little bit of cornstarch or flour, stir it up, and then put it on top of pasta. It's delicious. So just, you know, there's a million ways that you can think of, well, hey, I'm doing it this way. How can I change it out and make it a healthy option? Adding that quinoa to salad. So you made a salad, make that a meatless meal, put some quinoa in there, have a rice bowl, you know, a lot of veggies and beans, maybe make a stir-fried rice kind of thing and add some tofu in there instead of adding the shrimp or meat or something. So think about ways you can sub it. And like I said, I'm gonna send some stuff your way that'll help you to eat a little bit healthier, but really be cautious about those pre-made or processed plant-based foods, because they might be a little catching you there off guard. You think you're being healthy and you're not. Again, if you would open your camera and hit on the link that pops up from scanning this QR code when you hold it up to the screen and take the evaluation, you'll be entered to win a prize if you leave me your email, and we'll get some information to you, and this will take you like 2 to 3 minutes to fill out at most, and I appreciate that. Thank you in advance. These are the references we used. And then finally, you know, the emails, like I said, glad to get emails from you. I say this all the time. My email address is at the top there, zellers@njaes.rutgers.edu. My website is there. The New Jersey website, that FCHS website, we have a lot of recipes. We have recipe videos, we have fact sheets, all kinds of good information there. I encourage you to go there. And then there's an all over Rutgers Cooperative Extension website that has a lot of good information. Our Facebook page where we post educational tips and program postings is there. And then finally the Facebook page at the bottom, which is for the entire county RCA count or FCHS county website. So check them out, and I appreciate you joining us today. I apologize again for the poor connectivity with the internet, but hopefully you got the information today by watching here. Thank you. Have a great day.